Previously on Investors in the Wild.
I had a 2-bedroom apartment in Darling Point. It was a beautiful Art Deco apartment in a building of only 6 apartments. We decided, let's sell. And we ended up choosing the agent who sold the most expensive 2-bedroom apartment that was comparable to ours in our suburbs. They say, hey, we've got all these potential buyers, people who are really interested, exciting, we've got 6 people who seem really solid. They then contacted everyone and said, hey, auction date's this day. Or a lot of people started dropping off. And suddenly we had 1 potential buyer, which you wouldn't do an auction for. They tried to tell us that the property was worth less than what we thought. And we're like, well, you sold the one down the road. We're just getting a sense that we're getting manipulated. It's an easy way to save some money on selling, and it's something that a lot of people don't do.
Welcome back to episode 2 on selling an investment property. We continue the amazing conversation with our investor, Rebecca, who shares her experience selling an apartment in Sydney's eastern suburbs. In today's episode, we have completely different takeaways though. We'll talk about what Rebecca wished she'd thought about before even buying the place that they sold. This was a hiccup that made selling trickier for them. I can't wait to hear what you think.
Remember Faz as well. He actually deliberately targets properties that have been on the market for a while. He doesn't see them in their first week of being open, in their second week. He waits till they're 3-4 weeks because, and I think he specifically says, because then the agents are more desperate to sell and the sellers are more desperate to sell. And so there are, it's so funny, Daria, you really do need to think about the chess game between the 3 people. Are you selling to an investor who's like deliberately preying on you wanting to be rushed and selling quickly?
Exactly. Well, guys, is like you've got to think about who the potential buyers are for your area though. Like obviously investors are very different to people who want to live in the space. But like depending on where you are, there may not be a lot of people who want the type of property you've got. So like the one we had, it was beautiful and I loved it. But we were on the first level. And so there was no elevator, no parking. And for our area, it's a lot of downsizers. And so they're sort of 2 things they really want because they don't want to be walking upstairs when they're older. And so from their perspective, they're like, hang on, this isn't going to be the right property for me. And so when we were looking to sell, we're like, we love this property and we can see why a lot of people would love this property. But we also thought, hang on, there's a lot of reasons why a downsizer may not want it. Maybe we don't have as big a buyer pool as we thought we would have, even though we think it's beautiful. Because like for a young family, it's not necessarily the right size. There's no outdoor space. For a downsizer, it's, stairs and no parking. So who's left to buy this property? And especially for our suburb where it mainly is downsizers, there's not a lot of young families and stuff like that. And so looking back, like that was something that we couldn't change, but was something that was, I guess, a factor in like who the potential buyer pool is and who we had to choose from. And it's something, I guess, from my next purchase, I'll definitely be thinking, okay, this is a suburb we're looking at. What type of people like to buy in this area? What kind of places? Do they like apartments or do they like houses? Do they have to have parking or do they not really care? Like, what are the sort of the hot style of properties in that area? And that's something I will definitely be looking at because I think that's something we were, even though, again, beautiful property, but slightly disadvantaged, with that sort of style of property in the area we were in.
I think that comes back to being intentional about your either purchase or sale of your property. And I think maybe in the early stages when you're trying to, for yourself, determine what is the price that I want to sell my property for, that's where that thought comes into play. It's like, right, who's going to be my end customer? And again, this came up in our first episode with KJ, but it's like, who's my end customer going to be? And therefore, okay, in your instance, I don't have many, my audience might be limited. So therefore, what's the minimum I'm willing to accept and sort of working that through in your mind. But I guess the golden nugget here is don't go into the whole process unless you know that before, unless you've determined what that is for yourself. Because in this game of psychological warfare, you're going to be, they're going to beat it into you psychologically that you should be accepting less, but you should you should know that up front and be like, well, this is, and maybe even discuss it with the agent. Say, I know all of these things, the limitations here, the benefits here, the disadvantages, the advantages. On that basis, I've determined this price and this is what I want to sell it for. Can you tell me if you can sell it for that? If the answer is yes, then let's move forward.
And I mean, that's what we did. So we were like, we know we don't have outdoor space. We know we don't have parking, but we know we have, the floors, the high ceilings, the view and all of those things. The thing is, when it comes to like time to actually having open homes and you're getting the feedback from people, if you think about it, you only hear what they tell you has happened. And they were very much like, oh yeah, someone was interested, but you don't have parking. Another person, wanted outdoor space. And so you're thinking in your head, oh, so the people who are coming to visit, they like it, but there are things missing. And so then suddenly in your head, you're like, oh, okay, well, I better take an offer soon because, the people who are seeing it are, they're saying it's, 85% there, but there's some crucial pieces that are missing. And so it's hard. Like, even though we literally went through that stage, until you get the feedback from the open homes, you don't know if your logic and what you think is what the public thinks and the people who are potentially buying it. But then also you don't know if that's actually what they think because you're only getting it secondhand through your agent. So
Faz had cameras in his home while they were doing open homes. And he
Are you serious?
I swear. I don't know if that's normal. I've never heard of anyone else doing that, but he mentioned they were talking about the garden because I thought that was golden. I mean, I would probably be nervous to do it, but yeah,
whatever works.
Another idea. Hey, it's your extra 100K that you're getting, so you got to work for it, honey. Got to work for the honey, the money, honey.
Yeah, the cameras aren't that expensive. I'd rather the 100K, so I'll spend the money on that.
Straight.
But then you're getting the feedback direct. I think that speaks to, and Rebecca, this is how we first thought, let's sit down and have a chat, because you heard KJ's episode where she was talking about her pink kitchen. And it was great for women. Women loved it. But the husbands who would come through would be like, I don't want a pink kitchen. And so you really have to think through the end customer even when you're buying a place. Who is going to buy this place off me? Give me a second. Bella's sneezing. So who's going to buy this place off me? And you want to buy something that has a lot of buyer appeal. The thing that I learned from listening to your story, Rebecca, is there are going to be a lot of cashed up downsizers hitting the market. They're going to be selling their big houses in Paddington and Bellevue Hill. What are they looking for? They're looking for apartments with one floor. They want to be in a beautiful space. They want a car because they don't want to be carrying groceries. They want a car spot because they don't want to be carrying groceries from the shops. This really makes me start to think, rather than, what do I feel like buying? I want to buy a house next because I want to renovate it. It's really thinking about like who's got money at the moment? Who do I want to make money from? What suburbs are they in? What can I afford there? And then starting to think through what kind of lifestyle do these people want to create, and really going in eyes wide open.
This is almost taking me back to our job at Telstra, and like every time you wanted to create a new piece of software, you had to do a customer journey mapping, and you had to basically paint an end-to-end picture of your customer, and then you would start even considering a build of some sort of software that you want to make useful for that customer. It's almost like taking your next property sale or purchase as a project, a research project, and breaking it out into, before you even meet with the first agent, it's almost doing that mapping. And as you just said, like knowing who your end customer is, how much they earn, what they'd be looking for, what the disadvantages are in terms of what you don't have to meet that customer need, and therefore what your solution is to convince that person that need can be born or isn't needed. It's almost, so I'm learning a lot as well. I think as a person who is looking for prospective properties, sometimes I'm probably not doing enough of that initial work. So it's doing your research and preparing yourself as much as you can before you start engaging in a conversation. So this has taught me to do that. It's actually to look at it as a project.
Well, it's an investment, right? It's an investment, and any investment you should be doing your research on. And I think the thing is, Beck, with what you're saying about cashed up downsizers, definitely a great market to be selling to. But I think the other thing is, like, a lot of them are going to apartments because they're downsizing, but then you also have to deal with the cost of strata, which is not fun for, investments. So it's not that it's not doable, it's just another factor that you don't have to deal with houses.
Pros and cons.
Exactly.
Yeah. Listening to you reminded me the Rose Bay apartment. I bought it because I was like, this is my forever apartment. This is where I grow old and be a spinster. I'm going to be really happy here. And then things went like horribly wrong with the apartment. And, it became an investment, and then eventually I ended up selling it. So the things that I loved about the apartment, close to Rose Bay and Dog Beach, beautiful high ceilings, very Art Deco, quite pretty. But it was very clearly like a woman's apartment. It was a very feminine style apartment. It's near a dog beach. It was not a bachelor kind of apartment, which meant when I was selling it, I only really had women who are interested or an investor. You don't want investors interested in your property because they're much more strict with what they're going to pay. They're not putting upward pressure on prices. They're trying to keep it down. And I hate to say it, but young women are not going to have as much disposable income as the older demographic who are downsizing. I think, Rebecca, you mentioned, was it your apartment was purchased with cash, like the person who bought yours paid with cash, or they had a huge cash balance?
Pretty sure they were a grandmother downsizing. I think they were from the country, and then they were selling the farm maybe and moving there, but I'm pretty sure there was no loan against the property that they bought. And I think that would be the case with all the downsizers, right? So, makes sense.
Yeah. Whereas when I sold mine, there was a young woman who was in there in the bidding battle. And once it hit 900, she was like, yeah, that's my loan. I can't bid any higher. Whereas if you're a downsizer, you've got a lot of cash, it really makes you think about things differently.
Well, you want to sell to someone who's emotionally attached to the apartment rather than someone who's looking at it as a financial investment. Like the person we sold to, she had a granddaughter apparently who went to school across the road, and her daughter-in-law lived in the suburb next door. So from that perspective, it was like, oh, well, this property would be perfect for her. Her granddaughter can come up, from school across the road to the grandmother's. Like it made a lot of sense. And so from our perspective, we're like, well, she should want this property. Whereas if it was an investor, they were just like, oh, you know what? No, because from their perspective, there are so many different places you can invest, right?
Yeah.
You're not having to live in it. You don't have any sort of specific functional needs with the property. So, you want people who are specifically attracted to the place that you're selling.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So if I summarize maybe some of the key points that I've got before we go to last questions, I love what you said. Ask for everything. Exclusivity, commission, put it all on the table. And especially when the market's not hot, don't be afraid to put the offer out there. If they don't say anything, just go quiet for a week. Give them time to think about it. I love the thinking about, who is your end customer, really thinking about that even well ahead of your purchase, doing your research on property value, doing your research on Reddit sales tactics, having a partner in crime and, having that support network to have the conversations with, and don't shop when you're hungry. Like they're probably the 5 key takeaways I've gotten from this. Oh, and the power. You have power in choosing when to sell or when to not sell. And so don't be afraid to use that power.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Nice surprised.
Thank you. Yeah. Daria, any final questions before we wrap up?
Just, I guess, if there's one thing that you would say to yourself before going down this journey, the best piece of advice that you would give, what would it be?
For me, it's going to be that end customer piece again. It's going to be whatever I purchase needs to be something that people will want to buy in the future. But also when it comes to selling that purchase, think about that end customer and say, okay, do they care if I redo the bathroom, or are they going to do a full reno when they buy it anyway? Because I can easily put more money into sprucing it up, and that money doesn't have any impact on the sale price.
Yeah.
And, all of this is just something that you're guessing, right? Like there's no hard definitive answer on, yes, it's having an impact, but it's very easy to spend money on renovating a place and saying, oh, I'm going to do all these different things to make it more sellable, but you actually don't get much of your money back, or you might get money back, but not all of it. And so just being really careful about where you invest your money into the property before you
I'm
sell.
going to tell you something interesting that I did in this space, because I've got the same questions, because we're looking at, my parents and I are looking at renovating my family home. And one of the things that we did, because we were uncertain, because we've got like these grand ideas, knock down a wall and create an extra space, and like add a glass balcony instead of wood and make everything. So what we did was we got prospective agents who wanted to sell our home to come back to us with what needed to change for them to be able to sell our home. Like, what are the minimum renos that are going to be required for them to be able to more easily sell our home? And they literally gave us a list of like 6 to 8 things. And then they said that through their own people, they could get that done for around $30,000, which to me sounded ridiculously cheap, and I actually don't believe them. But it's an estimate, they say, and if we go with them, they'll get their people in and they'll do and it was just more cosmetic changes that they would make to certain aspects of the home. But I think that gave us a really good gauge as to what we needed to change in order to help sell our home. So it's a bit sneaky, but if you wanted to, think about a way to basically do the minimum renos required to make your home more viable for the next prospective buyer, bring in an agent and ask them what they think needs to change.
It's funny that you said that, because that's what we did with the agent that we ended up using. And at the start, we talked about lots of different things, and then she pulled back a lot because I think she realized if we spend too much money on the reno, she then has to get a higher price because we're going to want our money back out of that. So she actually started saying, oh, I don't think you need to do this. Oh, I don't think you need to do that. And we ended up, I think we spent the money where it needed to be spent, majority of, on the whole. But I also would say, I feel like sometimes they feel like they just give you advice so that they feel like they're being helpful, and so you trust them. So I wouldn't, I would almost do what you did with maybe 4 agents and compare notes and see.
I just did it with one. With one just to get a view, because, and what she came back with, as you said, was a lot less. Or what there were 2 of them, a man and a woman. What they came back with was a lot less than what we thought in our heads. But that was great for me, because I would rather do a lot less. And if they're giving me, and this is where I'm going to hold them to account, right? If I choose to go with these agents to sell this home in the long run, I'm going to say, you gave me this list. You said 30,000. It'll probably come to 50,000. Let's be realistic about what those changes are. But I would rather do less, because I don't want to spend time on renos. I would want to sell the property quickly. But then it's like, now you need to sell it for this amount because we've listened to you about that, and it's being firm in that regard. But that really gave me, because again, flying blind, totally green, have no experience in renos or anything like that. It gave me what the minimum is, and they said things like, just repaint the house, repaint the whole house, change this kitchen bench, repaint the kitchen from brown wood to white, just repaint it to white, and then add metallic knobs on the door handles, things that are just so basic.
Yeah, it's not expensive. Changing knobs on a kitchen, like we did that. It's like, I don't know, $30-$40. Like it's really nice. Especially if you know how to use a screwdriver or a drill yourself.
Oh no, I'm screwed with a screwdriver. Let's be real. I pay the mailman to come and change a light bulb. I'm that woman, so that anyone can basically take me for a ride. But lucky I have this podcast to help advise you.
In saying all this as well, and this comes to like agents or like people doing like renovation work for you, I reckon you should always get 3 quotes minimum. And it's funny because whenever you go get a new supplier and you're looking at, doing something, you usually have to get a minimum of 3 quotes for everything, because to make sure you're not spending more than you should. And it's funny because often in life you don't do that. And I'm like, no, you should do that. you should always do that. I feel like why waste thousands of dollars unnecessarily?
100% gold.
Do you wish you'd gone with a different agent?
Honestly, I don't think it would have made a difference.
Okay.
But maybe I'm a bit jaded and don't have very high, belief that they can do a lot more. But I think it was a hard market to sell in. I think, I mean, the benefit of using the agent we did is I knew that they could put the pressure on when they wanted to, and I felt like I could actually read her better because I'd sort of experienced her before. Whereas if I'd used someone else I didn't know as well, it might have been harder to read her. So I don't actually regret using them. I just regret not fighting harder on the commissions and not potentially at least trying to get a non-exclusive contract. So
two regrets.
Yeah, I think with this, choosing a good agent's great, but I think ultimately it's more important that you make yourself a good negotiator.
Yeah. It feels like the lessons that you've shared are going to apply whether you've got the best agent in the world or someone less than that, because you still get gains from smaller commissions. You still get gains from negotiating exclusive. All of these things, they're like life skills.
Yeah. 100%. This and honestly, the best thing that's come out of this is the guide to playing psychological chess. The guide to playing psychological chess is coming soon off the back of this conversation. So I got a lot out of it, Rebecca. Thank you so much. Like, I've seriously have learnt a lot about what I would do next.
Me too.
It's so fun.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it, Rebecca. The thing that irks me most about this is, like, I just wish I'd started these conversations sooner. Like, how much money have I left on the table by just being like, okay,
don't think like that. Any gain is a gain, like whether it's, and so now you can be a big mogul with all this, for the next purchase.
Yeah. Better late than never, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Rebecca.
Bye,
thanks, Beck.
Yeah.
See you guys.
Bye.
Hello, it's Beck. If you thought this episode was valuable, please help others to find it by finding us on Spotify, dropping a rating or review, or just sharing it with a friend who would find these stories relatable and insightful. And if you're an investor with insights to share, hit us up on Instagram at InvestorsInTheWild or email investorsinthewild@gmail.com. After all, we're all mates helping each other. And if you're a hopeful investor, we would love to hear from you. Reach out with feedback, questions, or topic ideas. It would be great to hear what you want to see behind the investing curtain. See you at the couch convo for this episode. Talk soon.